The arena smelled of blood, ozone, and burning oil. Lights the size of cargo freighters ringed the upper walls, casting pale illumination down on the pit's scorched floor. Spectators from 100 species crammed into tiered rows of obsidian benches, each murmuring in anticipation, some chittering, others humming, their voices joining in a chaotic, feverish crescendo. On the far side of the arena, steam hissed from the reinforced gates, and the announcer's voice, amplified through gravity-driven resonance, boomed across the Colosseum. Behold, Corvette the Executioner, undefeated in 63 challenges. Slayer of the Gravenox brood queen, breaker of bone, devourer of courage. The gate exploded open, spewing black smoke, and the giant emerged. Metal plates shifted across his torso like overlapping fangs. His eyes glowed red from beneath a helmet adorned with serrated bone. Chains hung from his arms, each linked to a different trophy: a skull, a shredded banner, a half-melted rifle. The crowd howled with approval. And then the other gate opened. There was no smoke this time, no fanfare, just the grinding squeal of old hydraulics and a single, small figure pushed forward by a guard who didn't even bother to step into the light. The child stumbled into the dust, barefoot and thin, clothes torn at the edges. He caught himself with both hands, stayed crouched, and lifted his gaze slowly. The laughter started almost immediately. A few of the more humanoid spectators slapped appendages together. Some threw coins into the arena. Others chanted mock bets. 5 seconds. 3 seconds. No time at all. The boy didn't react. His eyes scanned the arena, not with panic, not even fear, just observation. His chest rose and fell evenly, despite the weight of 10,000 alien eyes pressing down on him. Above it all, in the imperial dais, the Empress reclined on a throne carved from the fused cores of neutron bombs. She raised a goblet of molten crystal and smirked. "Is this Earth's answer to our challenge?" she said to her court, voice dripping with disdain. "A child? What insult is this?" One of her advisors, a shriveled being with an eyeless face, muttered, "According to records, the boy was captured aboard a human transport vessel raided near the Varnax belt. No weapons, no implants, no defense protocols. Then let the lesson be cruel," she said, sipping as the arena lights dimmed. Corvette raised his blade and stalked forward. The weapon was wider than the boy's entire body, and twice as tall. He made no sound as he moved, servos in his knees hissing in rhythmic sequence. Each step left a dent in the sand-covered floor. He didn't charge. He didn't need to. The child would run. They always ran. But Dax didn't run. He stood slowly, brushing his palms on his tattered shirt. A trickle of blood slid down his right temple from a small gash. He looked up at the towering figure approaching and tilted his head slightly, like he was studying a puzzle he'd already solved, but found amusing anyway. Corvette raised the blade. The crowd leaned forward. The Empress whispered, "End it." Corvette swung. The blade moved in an arc designed to cleave through tank armor. The force of it split the air with a sonic crack. But it hit nothing. There was only dust. Dax wasn't there. Gas rang out. A second passed. Then 2. Corvette turned, sluggish for the first time in his long, brutal career. And then he screamed. It wasn't the pain of injury. It was confusion, disbelief, and something else, the shattering of certainty. The giant fell to one knee, clutching at his side. A series of rapid, deep slashes had opened through the gaps in his armor. Sparks sprayed from his back as a power line was severed. Another strike, and his right knee locked permanently in a backward twist. Dax appeared behind him like smoke from a dying fire. Eyes empty, limbs relaxed. He moved with no wasted motion, no anger, no effort. Corvette swung again, wildly this time. The blade whooshed through the air, throwing up sand. Dax had already ducked under it, stepping once, twice, and then driving both fists into the base of the warrior's neck. A crack echoed like a rifle shot. Korvek dropped his blade. His hands went slack. Dak stepped back. One breath. Two. The giant pitched forward like a falling tree, face first into the arena floor. Silence reigned. Somewhere in the upper rows, a glass shattered. Dax exhaled. It was the first sound he'd made since entering the arena. The boy turned slowly in a full circle, scanning the crowd as if expecting more. His arms hung loose at his sides, fingers twitching faintly, not from nerves, but calculation. In the royal box, the Empress stood frozen. Her goblet had tipped, and molten crystal dripped down the side of her throne. Ignored. One of the nobles whispered, "That wasn't luck." The announcer stammered into the mic, unsure whether to speak. Dax looked up. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just raised one hand and pointed directly at the Empress. And in that instant, the entire galaxy began to understand something Earth had never said aloud. You never send a child into the arena, unless you want to make a point. The cell was silent, save for the slow drip of water from a rusted pipe overhead. Dax sat cross-legged on the floor, his shadow flickering under the pulse of a weak, overhead light. His face remained unreadable, eyes closed, body still. He wasn't meditating. He was listening, counting footfalls, tracking door codes, memorizing the rhythm of the surveillance drones that passed by every 12 seconds. On the other side of the reinforced wall, Captain Lauren of the Kernithi Guard watched him through a two-way mirror, arms folded tightly across her armored chest. Her mandibles clicked once in frustration. "This is impossible," she muttered. Her second, a younger male with fresh paint still gleaming on his rank insignia, stood beside her. "We've run the footage 100 times. He didn't have a weapon. No implants. No external tech. Nothing should move that fast," she snapped. "Nothing born." The commander's voice came from behind them, low and cold. "That's not a child." General Kex entered with slow precision, his carapace lined with ceremonial etchings, each one earned in war. He was the Empress's enforcer, rarely seen outside her shadow. He stared at the boy behind the glass, his four eyes narrowing in scrutiny. "He's human," Lawrence said. "No, he's trained human," Kex replied. "There's a difference." He tapped a panel beside the observation screen, and a secondary feed appeared, battle footage from a different war, years prior. A unit of human operatives moved through the ruins of a fallen city, almost invisible even in infrared. One of them, a smaller figure, snapped a sentry's neck without a sound. The movements were identical to the ones seen in the arena. "You think it's the same boy?" Lauren asked. Kex didn't answer. He didn't need to. The implications were worse than confirmation. "We need to interrogate him." "You won't get anything," Kex said. "But I'll try." Inside the cell, Dax opened his eyes as the door hissed open. Kex entered alone. He didn't speak at first. He simply paced the perimeter of the cell with measured steps, the sound of his claws tapping against the floor like a metronome of tension. Dax didn't watch him. He waited. Finally, Kex stopped. "You understand me?" Dax nodded once. "Good. Then let's dispense with lies. Who trained you?" The boy said nothing. Kex tried again. "You executed a decorated war champion in under 10 seconds. How?" Again, silence. Kex approached, crouching just out of reach. "You think silence is strength. It isn't. It's a delay. You're buying time for something." "What?" Dax's head tilted. Kex sensed something shift, some undercurrent beneath the stillness, a current of thought that chilled him. "You weren't captured," Kex said suddenly, realization blooming in his mind. "You wanted to be here." Dax met his gaze then. It wasn't defiance in his expression. It was inevitability. The cell lights dimmed for a half second. Kex's head twitched. "What did you?" Then the alarm started. Red strobes flared through the corridor. An automated voice screamed in Kernithi. "Security breach. Deck 12. Intrusion detected." Kex stood sharply. "Who else came with you?" Dax stood, slowly, carefully. No one, he said. His voice was soft, flat, almost curious. Then who? The wall opposite the cell exploded inward. Flame and debris tore through the observation deck. Lauren's body hit the far wall in a tangle of limbs and armor. Smoke poured through the breach. Outlines emerged, humanoid, fast, lethal. 3 humans. Camouflaged suits. No insignia. One of them tossed a compact sphere into the room. It hissed once and released a pulse of magnetic interference. The cell door snapped open. Go, one of the soldiers said, voice masked. We got 5 minutes. Dax walked past Kex without sparing a glance. Kex reached for his weapon, but a sharp crack echoed, and his forearm dislocated as a round buried itself just beneath the joint. He howled and dropped to one knee. You brought a predator into your nest, the masked soldier said to him. Now it feeds. They vanished into the smoke with Dax in tow. Back on the observation deck, alarms continued to scream. Guards scrambled, weapons drawn, but the attackers moved too fast, always one step ahead. Hallways darkened. Gravity flickered. In the throne chamber, the Empress watched her screens go black one by one. Where's the boy? She hissed. No one answered. Dax and his team moved like phantoms through the fortress. They left no bodies, only disabled systems and broken surveillance. They weren't here for blood. They were here for information. In the command core, they inserted a drive. A swirling matrix of data began to siphon into it. Names, deployments, secret projects, galactic war plans. Dax stood watch as it transferred, face lit by the pulsing screen. You ready? One of the operatives asked. Almost, Dax replied. Footsteps approached. Reinforcements. He turned. 10 guards rushed into the hall, armored, disciplined. Dax didn't wait for orders. He ran forward without hesitation. He was a blur, low, fast, kinetic. A spin, a strike, a disarm. Weapons clattered to the floor. Bones cracked. In 10 seconds, it was over. He didn't kill them, just made sure they couldn't follow. The drive beeped. Transfer complete. They exfiltrated through a tunnel drilled days prior, disguised beneath a water processing core. As they vanished into darkness, Kex crawled into the ruined observation chamber, his broken arm dragging behind him. He looked at the destruction, the silence, the careful choices. That wasn't escape. It was a message, and it was only the beginning. The shuttle landed in the basin of a dead crater, engines whispering to a stop. Dust kicked into the air in lazy spirals, falling back onto old Kernathy structures buried beneath layers of ash and forgotten ambition. Dax stepped out into the silence first, rifle across his chest, helmet polarized. The sky above was the color of tarnished steel, and the wind carried a scent of oxidized metal and scorched glass. The others followed, eyes sharp, boots crunching over brittle rock. Lieutenant Mendez tapped his visor. Local feeds are clear. No comms chatter. No movement. Either they pulled out, or they're deeper in. Dax cut in. His tone carried certainty, not suggestion. They moved fast across the surface, slipping between jagged boulders and collapsed pylons. The target was buried a kilometer beneath them, a black site research vault abandoned after the ceasefire. According to intercepted logs, something had reactivated the facility. Something had triggered the biometric failsafes and sealed it from the inside. Mendez jogged beside Dax. You sure it's here? I'm not guessing. Dax's voice held a precision that brooked no doubt. I saw it. In him. The him lingered like a shadow between them. The boy, the construct that Dax had killed on Othel Prime hadn't been the first. The door to the vault was fused shut. A half-meter of carbon alloy plating melted across the seam as though someone inside had tried to trap whatever was already there. Holloway set up a magnetic rig while the others scanned for heat signatures. There, she muttered, pointing at a pulse in the wall. Heartbeat. Slow. One subject, moving. Dax stepped forward, placing his palm against the surface. It felt warm, almost organic. He whispered, "They didn't abandon this place. They locked it." The rig whined. Sparks burst outward. The door screamed open. The air inside hit them like a slap. Wet, foul, full of copper and decay. Lights flickered along the corridor, casting long shadows. The walls bore scoring patterns, claw marks, blast residue, melted steel where insulation had run like wax. Holloway swore under breath. What the hell happened here? No one answered. Dax moved like a phantom through the hallways, eyes never still. The deeper they went, the stranger the damage. Screens were shattered from the inside. Reinforced doors had been dented outward. Something, or someone, had been trying to escape. At the core of the vault, they found the chamber. A transparent cylinder hung in stasis, surrounded by arc lamps and diagnostic rigs. Wires ran like veins into the floor. Inside the tube was a child. Another boy, but not a clone, not a match. This one was smaller, skin paler, and unlike the last, this one was awake. He looked at Dax, not past him, at him. "Jesus," Mendez muttered. The boy spoke. His voice was soft. "You came." Dax stepped closer. "Who are you?" "I'm the first," the boy replied. "They made me before the war ended, before they realized humans couldn't be copied without consequences." The room went still. "What consequences?" Holloway asked, voice tight. The boy's expression didn't change. "The ones you bring with you." A soft hum began in the walls. Lights dimmed. The floor shook once, subtly. "Containment breach," Mendez barked. "We need to go." "No," Dax said. He triggered it. The boy nodded. "I'm sorry. They used me. I try to forget. But when he woke up, your twin, I remembered everything. And now I can't stop it." The hum became a wail. From the far corridor, movement. At first it was one figure, then another, then 10. All children, each one wearing Dax's face, but twisted, scarred, their skin patchy, their eyes blank. Products of iteration, failure, refinement. The prototypes. "Run," the boy said. The team opened fire. Rounds tore through the first wave, but they didn't fall like normal enemies. They moved like insects, skittering, twitching, darting in errata patterns. One leapt at Holloway, catching her shoulder. She screamed as its claws tore through armor. Mendez tackled it off, snapping its neck with one brutal twist. "Move." Dax didn't. He looked at the original, still locked in the cylinder. "Can you stop them?" The boy shook his head. "I can't. But you can." "Ow. Remember what they took." Dax blinked. And then he did. His first deployment. The ambush in the Red Canyons. The child soldiers used by the Kernethi. The orders to hold fire. Too late. The aftermath. The guilt. The rage. The reason he volunteered for neural mapping. They hadn't just copied his skills. They'd copied his trauma. And now it lived in the walls. He stepped forward and pressed his hand to the glass. The cylinder hissed open. The boy fell into his arms. "Take me with you," he said, "or they'll keep trying." Dax lifted him. "We're done running." They turned and ran. Behind them, the vault collapsed. Fire chased them through the tunnels, devouring the mistakes of a war no one wanted to remember. At the crater's edge, their shuttle lifted into the sky. Below, the moon burned, and Dax knew it wasn't over. The Kernethi had seen what made humans dangerous, but they still didn't understand why. The boy sat in silence as the stars dragged across the shuttle's viewport, his bare feet curled beneath him, small hands resting in his lap. Dax kept one eye on the controls, the other on the child who looked too frail to be a weapon, yet had survived horrors even hardened soldiers wouldn't dare speak aloud. "Where are we going?" the boy finally asked, voice almost drowned by the low hum of the engines. Dax didn't answer right away. He watched Earth grow in the distance, a blue sliver against the abyss, and let the silence stretch. Mendez and Holloway were asleep in the back, armor still dusted with ash and dried blood. No one had spoken much since they'd escaped the vault. Somewhere quiet, Dak said at last. Somewhere safe. The boy nodded. You're going to kill them, aren't you? It wasn't a question. There was no fear in his tone, only understanding. Resignation. They're still out there, Dak said. And they're still making more. The boy tilted his head. You know why it never worked, don't you? Dax met his gaze. Because they could copy the mind, the body, but not the soul. They thought it was about instinct, combat reflexes, programming. The boy's fingers tightened around the hem of his tunic. But it was pain. That's what made you real. The words hit like a blade turned inward. Dax rose, walked to the rear bay, and opened the encrypted console embedded in the wall. He keyed in a sequence that bypassed Earth's orbital command and tapped into Black Channel military logs. What he found didn't surprise him. 3 more facilities, hidden across the frontier systems. Buried, sealed, scrubbed from records, but still active. Each registered as occupied. Each housed constructs. He shut the console with a quiet click. The war had never ended. It had just changed uniforms. When they landed on the high ridge above New Cairo, the wind carried the dry heat of the desert plains and the low howl of dust devils skipping across the dunes. Dax led the boy through the canyon, boots crunching over brittle stone. Behind them, Mendez and Holloway held perimeter, scanning for movement. The lab was disguised as an old fuel depot, but the moment Dax keyed in the code, its facade shimmered and dissolved. Black walls and silver pylons rose from the rock, humming with latent power. Inside, the hallways were immaculate. Too clean, sterile in a way that felt wrong. No blood, no bodies, just silence. They reached the central chamber. There were children inside, dozens of them, floating in stasis, sleeping, breathing, and every single one wore Dax's face. The boy stood still, watching them. They made them better, he whispered. Cleaner copies. More efficient. But still hollow, Dax said. A screen lit up on the far wall. A Kernethi scientist appeared, gray skin stretched over sharp bones, eyes glinting with artificial light. You made it, the alien said. Good. Dax didn't speak. He stared at the screen, heart drumming slow and heavy. You were always meant to return. The Kernethi continued. These are not weapons, Dax. They are salvation, built from the only species we could not break. Dax stepped forward. You took my memories, my rage, my nightmares, and you put them into children. They are not children. They are vessels. Dax drew a sidearm. The screen flickered. You can't destroy them. They are you. No, Dax said quietly. They're your mistake. He fired. The round pierced the terminal, shattering the screen. Sparks exploded across the chamber. Alarms began to wail. The stasis pods hissed open. Dax turned to the boy. Get back. But the child didn't move. Instead, he stepped forward and raised his hand. The copies froze. Not physically, but something inside them halted. Like a thread had been pulled taut. They're still connected to me, the boy whispered. They don't know how to break free. But I can show them. He looked at Dax. I need your help. Dax hesitated, then knelt. The boy pressed his palm against Dax's chest. A flash, searing, wordless. Dax felt them. All of them. Every fragment, every echo, every broken copy that had been born of him. The pain, the confusion, the hollow fury with no target. But he didn't recoil. He embraced it. A tide of memories surged through him. Not just his own, but theirs. And then the tether snapped. The clone staggered back. For the first time, they looked around, disoriented, blinking like real children, waking from a long nightmare. Mendez burst into the chamber. We've got company. Frigate just broke Atmo. Dax rose. Evac all of them. Every pod. Holloway's voice cut in overcoms. Sir, we don't have room. Then make room. Dax barked. The boy looked up at him. What now? Dax looked at the sky. Now we show them what it means to be human. They left New Cairo in flames, but the children lived. For the first time in decades, the tide had turned, not through blood, not through fire, but through choice. The Kernethi would come. They would send assassins, armies. But Dax knew the truth now. They hadn't feared humanity's strength. They feared its will. Because you can copy a weapon, but not a conscience. And that was the one thing they could never kill.